already fucking up. Okay.
Fancy.
Hello, and welcome to our first ever interview episode on digital dopamine. Yes, I did record an intro on the actual meeting that we did the interview on. Yes, it was super awkward, so I cut it out, and here we are. Today on the show, we're talking to a very good friend of mine, Briana Truong.
I am stoked. Thank you so much for having me.
She's a fantastic UX designer and a student at the same time. So we'll be discussing topics like staying motivated, finding work-life balance, and keeping your inspiration in all the chaos of the world. So, without further ado,
I just remember you designing your digital dopamine stuff, and I think it's like pretty cool that you're actually doing it and inviting people.
thank you. Thank you. I rebranded twice since then.
You know what? As you should.
Okay, let's dive right into it. So, we're going to discuss a bit of your journey in the design industry first. So, what inspired you to pursue a career in design?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like as a kid, I actually went to art school, so I just had just a keen eye for like kind of design and things that like are aesthetic. But because of I guess like my upbringing and my environment, I kind of followed a very typical safe path in a sense. Like my parents didn't really foster the artistic sense of like, oh hey, like you should pursue a more stable career. So that's why I got a degree in business and kind of like left all that behind. And once I graduated, I realized that I don't really want to pursue that type of life. And my best friend Tina, who's also in our program, was like, "Hey, like I also just graduated kinesiology. Don't want to pursue anything in that." And it's like I this really cool program that is just opening up at State for UX design, and I had no idea what that was about, but I think it was really cool to see not like I don't know if tech is really that stable, but being able to bring that sense of aesthetic and simplicity and user flow and all that stuff in a digital space and making it a little bit more attainable because I feel like going back into the art of like oh like I'm just going to draw like I want to do graphic design felt a little bit too overwhelming and too scary to kind of like start at the good age of 26 so it's kind of like a slower grasp of getting back into being artistic and like kind of caring about design and aesthetic. So that's me. I also Tina makes stickers, so she's just like, hey, like you should help me design. Like you're really good at drawing this, and this, and being in a program with like graphic designers like yourself and like Jason and like everybody else has really reignited that spark of like, oh hey, like it isn't too late, and it's like it's people that I can like look towards, and I respect you guys so much. And I just like you guys influenced me to be more creative and like it's never too late to like start again and like kind of like reignite that flame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
so happy to be an inspiration. That's so exciting.
Yeah, of course.
Is there anything about your studies in business that you think
Mhm.
have improved your work as a UX designer so far?
I would say so. Just because speaking with our professors who are industry professionals, it's because it's such an up and coming career path. It's nice to see of like, oh, like product management and kind of the scope that user experience flows under. I think it does help a lot because it's like trying to get into it. It's like even like ourselves, it's just like, oh, we're starting off like kind of like small businesses, X, Y, Z. Having that business knowledge and how you can apply that, I feel like makes you a lot of a stronger candidate to understand business flow and how smaller businesses can manage to improve their user experience without having to like break the bank or kind of understanding how that affects their business and bringing that into it, I think is a lot of knowledge and experience that is plenty to be shared and can help everybody involved.
Lovely. How has your approach to
Yeah.
design evolved since you started school?
Ooh. I think it's evolved a lot just from learning about theory and about design. One thing that was really reinforced to us is that you are not the user and being able to take yourself out of the process to being like, oh, this is what I like. This is how I think is most intuitive. How I feel like humbled very quickly to being like, I do not know best. And although it is very important to have a fine balance of that because it's like from what we've learned. It's like this is what's best practice, but then also balancing what the client wants and understanding how everybody else's brains work is not the same as myself. Surprise there. And being just more considerate and being open minded to how much there is to learn and I guess like what professors and also even from other students and the people that we get to do usability tests and understand their workflow has evolved constantly. And I love that. And I don't think I'll reach a point where it's like, oh, it's not going to be evolving. Just with all the new technology that's coming out, the new platforms that we're using, and also integrating accessibility. It's like you always think about it, but it's hard to really put into practice of like, ooh, like selecting colors, selecting fonts. It's not just based on like, ooh, like this is pretty, this is nice. It's like how do we make this accessible and usable for everybody?
Right. And in your typical design process, when you're trying to make things accessible, what does that research typically look like for you specifically?
Still learning more about it because we don't really touch too much on it in school, but just making sure that we're complying with kind of like WCAG standards, and also just making sure that the font sizes are large enough that the way that we're designing things, we can look up to be like, oh, is this like screen reader appropriate, or like how to navigate, because we are only designers, like we don't actually do the full on coding for it, and like we haven't really too like touched too much on like how does this, I think it's like an ongoing meme of just like designers and then the actual like developers to be like, oh yeah, you want this, and it's like I can't do that. So we're we're still figuring that out, but I think based on the prototypes that we've had and the feedback that we receive from our instructors, that's how we're slowly kind of learning how to integrate and put those all together, of like making sure that our color palettes are high contrast enough, the text that we put on is large enough and has enough contrast as well. The pictures have all descriptions and all that stuff. So kind of like in a mental checklist of like I got deduced marks or kind of like, oh hey, like this is the feedback that we received that like you should do this. I think it's just like kind of a mental checklist, and then also making sure the resources that are given to us from our instructors that we're also going through those and making sure that we're fulfilling those.
Neat. Would you consider it a learning curve from first semester when we were focusing on lots of personal projects to now when it's all user focused? Would you consider that a big shift? Was that challenging to navigate at all, trying to shift your focus from what you personally like to what the users would want?
Oh, 100%. I don't think the learning curve was too steep because we went like almost directly into group projects. It was like, so as I mentioned before, of like the learning curve of like shifting from myself to other people. Like that, I think personally was like a hard learning curve, but because I am working with a lot of other people on these projects, it's like having that open mind of understanding where everyone else comes from and their perspectives wasn't too hard. I feel like it was a little bit too many group projects, and like I guess like picking your groups, it's like it's almost love working with everybody. It is a little bit like a closed echo chamber, but that is very just like circumstantial, because it's like you only do like, yes, you do work with new people. I guess not really new people, but like different, because we get to pick a group, so obviously we want to like work with our friends. But eventually, I think with enough group projects, then it becomes sort of an echo chamber. Like, yes, there are a lot of different perspectives, but it's like, oh, look, I know how Aaron thinks, in a sense of just like, oh, like I think this is how he's gonna apply it, or like how Tina's gonna think, or how Chris is gonna think, or how Ron's gonna think. Um, and I think our groups are large enough to be like, oh, hey, like we're still learning from each other. But I think if it's continuing in that sense, that it becomes a little bit of a closed echo chamber. But because we have such different backgrounds, that
Right.
it's been pretty good.
Sweet. And when you're working in groups, are there any specific tools or techniques that you kind of utilize to keep yourselves on track and stay focused?
It's actually some of our group projects that is actually required to like show that we have a schedule and that we're following the timeline. Majority of us have ADHD, so these timelines are mostly like for these suggestions. But I would like to say that we are all on top of it. So it is just like an estimated time, but we all get our stuff done. But we have kind of like scheduling apps or kind of like, so Tina, like I love Tina. because me and her also just like work together really well, is that like I kind of just like dive off the deep end, and I'm like I'm going in, and sometimes I go in a little too far, and Tina keeps me on track because she's like I need to have she's a very good leader in the sense that she has a very good scope of the project, and like kind of reins everybody in to make sure that like the key concepts and the key deadlines and everything is met from our rubrics and everything. So she reins me in of like, hey, like let's not go that too far into like my perfectionism and like kind of like wanting to fledge out all like the small details. So I think end of the day, I think it's more so the way that we keep each other on track is our respect for each other's time and commitment to the assignments. I don't know if we're all. I know Chris is really into like organization because it's like also you as well of like you have your schedule down to the minute of like this is a meeting here, this is this, and I think more so for all of us because we have so many group projects is just more open dialogue and like communication of like hey like when do we need this completed by, who's taking this task, and just like discussing it amongst ourselves. I wish we had the privilege of being able to I don't know, I think we're just chilling. I think I don't know, just like with school, I think it's such an interesting balance of like, oh hey, like you're almost like your assignments are you cosplaying essentially as like working professionals, and it's like I like we technically don't need this to this extent until you're
Mhm.
working. So it's like like oh hey like this client, it's like what's your timeline? What's this? Like where do we put those? But it's like with us, it's like hey like we'll just put in the Discord chat of like hey we need this done. Who's doing this? Like blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting because that's like now that we're actually doing that, I'm like, wait, I'm like all the stuff that we're doing in class, we actually need to do IRL. Let me just pull up my assignment real quick and look up what I needed, like how to apply it to this project right now, which is so funny. Um, so I
So
think that's a work
when
in progress. So I'll come back to you with a real answer later.
lovely. So sounds great. When you personally are working in group projects or real projects, whatever kind of projects, how do you balance school and work and actually having time for yourself?
Well, that is also a work in progress, because time management is very difficult, I would
It's a
say.
struggle. Yeah.
It is very much. With 5 classes, 5 group projects, a relationship, work, hanging out with friends. It's been really tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like this year has been a lot of growth and a lot of reflection. Managing all of those, I think it's setting up almost like quotas in a sense. Mentally, obviously not like physically to be like, oh hey, like I spent this how many hours, and it's just like making sure it's even. But I think also a lot of communication and setting expectations. This year has been a lot of realizing how many communication go unsaid and like they're uncommunicated. So then it's unfair for every party involved of like, oh, like my friends expect this of me, or like my boyfriend expects this of me. Um, my friends expect this of me to like be there for a certain amount when it's like an unrealistic standard that I'm putting for myself. And then when I feel like I fall short, I just feel like a bad person and like blah blah. So that is a work in progress of how to manage my schedule because I feel like there's just never enough time for everything. It's just like I don't have enough
Right.
time to do my schoolwork. I don't have enough time to work. I don't have enough time to see my boyfriend. I don't have enough time to see my friends. Um, but I think that all comes like internally of just like never feeling like I will ever live up to the standards that I set for myself, but they're all like super unrealistic. But long story short, the calendar app, a shared calendar is really nice.
There you go. Great solution. Calendar apps are fantastic. I agree. They're amazing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So given all of that, even though you're still kind of figuring it out yourself, what advice would you give to someone struggling with burnout?
Mm. Personally, or like eh,
You mean you're talking to me? I mean, sure. What advice would you give me?
I feel like anybody with burnout. That's a good one. This is multi-tiered. I think this one I'm realizing now is that like now that I'm here, it's like I was also super burnt out, but kind of like because it was so high strung, you're like, oh no, like this is what was necessary in the moment, and like I got what I needed to be done. I think being able to take that step back and see it objectively, because it's like for me, I was always telling you to be like, oh hey, like I need you to rest, I need you to take what's necessary to make sure that you're not burnt out, and not realizing that it's the what's the saying, the kettle calling the whatever.
Oh yeah, the kettle calling the pot black,
Yeah,
or the other way
it's
around.
like I am one of them. We get it. We're on it.
Yeah,
And on top of that, of like the unrealistic expectations that you set for yourself, I guess understanding why you do what you do is a really, I think, the biggest thing, because it's like you're kind of head down of like this needs to be done, this is blah blah blah. But I guess also like at what cost are you doing it? Because it's like, oh, like I am putting so much time and effort into this because I care about it, because I want to do this, and not really thinking about the cost that it comes at. Because it's like, because you're going to go 120%, it's like are you eventually like, are you almost like speeding up the process of you falling out of love with the process because you become burnt out? Like you're putting so much into it and then burning out. It's like are you still looking at the art that you love the same way, because you're putting too much of yourself and exerting yourself into making it, I guess like almost like come into fruition? Because it's like, yes, obviously like fill up your schedule and like take all the opportunities that you have in the moment, right? But it's like, what are you also burning out for?
I like that reframing it. That's a good way to look at it, I think.
Because it's like another big thing of like the whole like managing all the things, it's also taking a step back to realize like why you're doing it in the first place, and just like, oh, like it's because I enjoy it, but like are you actually enjoying it in the process? I just like when you are burning yourself out, it's like are you doing what you love because you actually love it, or it's like you're looking at it now as a task? And also like I think constantly, yes, like reframing everything of like, oh, it's just not a head down needs to be done. I say this all the time to Leslie, but it's just like, is it really that serious? And it's like, it's not that serious. You know what I mean? It's like, you such high expectations for yourself, you don't realize you're setting the bar at 120%. And it's like, you on like even you complimenting me earlier about like the work that I was doing. I was like, oh, you you loved it, like you really liked it. And I was like, oh, to me I was like, okay, like maybe I could have done better, like maybe I should have like fleshed it out a little bit more, like more details, like all that stuff. And so like when you said that, it's like oh wait, like how do I like also give praise to myself when I need to, so that I also feel that like fulfillment? Because it's like having that high standard and always feeling like it's too high. So even if I hit 100%, it's like oh no, I only hit like maybe like 60%. And then I feel like that leads to faster burnout, because it's like oh, I'm overexerting myself, and like also not giving myself enough like almost like value in the work that I do, that it's like oh my god, like I need to do more and I need to do more, and it's like a vicious cycle of just like oh, like I need to feel fulfilled, but I'm setting the bar way too high, and I'm also not giving myself enough credit. So it's like constantly like, let's actually readjust our expectations here and check in to see why we're doing things the way that we're doing them, and making sure that we still love what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finding the
Um,
balance between like validating yourself and
mm,
finding areas where, okay, actually, I don't know enough about this to not need someone else to tell me I'm doing it right. Finding that balance
mm,
is so difficult.
so difficult. And I feel like that brings up. I saw this meme, not a meme. It was I hate that all my motivational things and like mini therapy things are from Instagram and like TikTok. But one of them was just like, oh, are you really self-aware? Because like if you're only just mean to yourself, that means you're not self-aware, you're just being mean to yourself.
I saw that you liked that on Instagram in the
Mhm.
new what your friends have liked feature. I was like, Yeah. That's very accurate.
And I was like, do I send this to people? Or I'm like, maybe I'm just we'll just not call out call it today. It's just that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a
Yeah.
little refresher.
Mhm.
It's good to be
Yeah.
reminded
But
of,
every
though.
time like I don't know, I just like think about it every day. I think it might be my new Roman Empire. Not the gravity of ocean. Not the gravity of ocean. Not the weight of ocean. Not the weight of the ocean on itself. Um, is my new Roman Empire. I was just like, ooh, I'm like, am I really self aware? Because I'm like, do I ever like think about the things I'm good at and then feel proud of it? I don't know if I've ever felt proud
Of
of
yourself.
myself.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because I think everything that I've accomplished feels more like a weight off my shoulder as opposed to, oh yes, like hallelujah, like wow,
Interesting.
and like would want to tell people about. And I think the only things I have been proud about are related to other people. So it's like what my role accomplished for other people, as opposed to being like, oh, like I did this for myself. Like me graduating and
Interesting.
getting an undergrad, it's like oh, thank God. Graduating high school, oh, thank God. As opposed to being like, wow, like I worked really hard and like I'm proud of myself for getting myself here. It's I mean, like if I could do it, that means like other people have done it. So it's like, why should I be like proud of that? Which is like a really weird concept. But when other people do it, it's like, oh, wow, I'm so proud of you. Like you worked so hard to get yourself there. But like if I do it, it's like
Hmm.
all right, whatever. So
Interesting. So you think that you should only be proud of yourself for things that no one else has ever accomplished?
yeah, I also watched a reel about this and how crazy that thing is because you don't realize that that's how you feel until you say it out loud and you're like, that's kind of ridiculous. But I can't tell you why
Yeah.
my thought process was like that.
Interesting. Okay. Moving into inspiration, where you get your inspiration. Who or what
Mhm.
inspires your work the most, would you say?
Oh,
Like when you're doing real creative thinking stuff?
I think it's all of you guys, like all like the state DGens. Like truly, like I admire all of you guys so much because of not only your talent and your skill, but also like you guys as people. So it's like when I'm looking for inspiration, it's like I kind of channel a little bit of all of you guys because you guys also have your like fortes. Like you're like it's just like very like ooh like I need to channel like Riley's confidence and also like your branding. Like I just like oh my god, like I think about the skincare one all the time to be like okay, like this is what a brand guideline is supposed to look like. So I'm like how can I try to emulate this like for my brand guideline for like this project? Or if I'm thinking about like logos and kind of like animation, it's like oh, okay, like I'm gonna channel Zaki, and it's like if I'm kind of feeling like oh like very like ooh like artsy, it's like oh it's Koi and Jason, and like you guys all have skills that I admire and like I want to be more like. So it's like oh like thinking about like you, Tina, Chris, like it's just like Aaron, everybody. I don't know if there's anybody that I channel the most, but I think about you guys all very often and like look for
That's so
inspiration in
wholesome.
all of you guys. Hmm.
I love that.
I love my friends.
We love you. Are there any design trends that you're particularly excited about or not excited about right now? Like, is there anything you've seen on Instagram that you're like, I love that, or I fucking hate that?
I don't know because like my feed is a mix of like deep fried memes and then also like designer things. So I can't tell if being like, wow, like this is meant to be bad. The bad memes, it's like you also have to fit a certain aesthetic for it to be like good enough to be considered bad, but like really good. I don't know.
Hmm.
Have you seen the raccoon memes? Like, has Tina showed you her collection of
I
like
don't think
ones
so.
that she found? I think she's like found like a specific like raccoon meme for everybody. So like I think next time you should ask her to be like, oh hey, like I don't know if you should mention. Yeah, I know you should mention me to like. Oh, Brie mentioned that you have like a collection. Then
I
they're
definitely
really
will.
good because it's like the 3D like the rainbow ombre, and then it's like the thing, and then it has like a
Oh,
drop
amazing.
shadow, and then
Okay.
yes.
We're
And
we're talking to Tina next week on the show, so we'll have her
Oh,
bring that
lovely.
collection to the audience.
Be like, hey. I don't feel like I'm really also up to date with designing lately, but I'm really loving that color palettes are a lot more diverse now, as opposed to kind of like sticking to like, oh hey, like these are the classics and like you see them very often. It's kind of more like, oh hey, like let's play with like highlighter colors or like pastel colors, and kind of having a lot more vibrancy to making things a lot more like quirky and fun and cute, as opposed to being like, ah, like here's just like a very safe neutral palette, which is nothing
Right.
wrong, because it's like I you see anything I design, it is dark, like dark neutrals and whatnot. So like I can't even say anything because I'm like, those are just safe. Like they're just so fun. They're just so they work together so well. Um, but I think like that's more inspiring for me. It's just like, oh, like playing around with colors, because it's like it's so hard to play around with bright, vibrant colors without it being too overwhelming. Um, but like just used like very well. So I think I don't know. I think it's just design. There's nothing that's bad necessarily if used in moderation and used, I guess, like
Okay.
correctly. Because like sometimes you see things and you're like, wow, like I never would have expected this color palette and this like font style to go together. But like
Right.
because it's used very carefully and also like product specific, it's like, oh wow, like that works so well for like a coffee brand. But you're like, that would not work for. I literally can't think of another product, even
Yeah.
looking at like 10 million. Trying to think of one.
Sometimes
Um,
it's the
yeah.
juxtaposition. It helps with
Mm,
things, right? Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, I get it.
yeah. Mm.
What kind of designer do you hope to become after graduation? Not in like technical
Wow.
terms, but give me some
Mm.
keywords of like who you want to be. What's your brand?
What's my brand? Oh,
We just talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
we talked about it, but have I really thought about it afterwards? No, because it's hard to think about myself. I want it to be fun. I want it to be approachable, accessible, and I think just like thoughtful and like considerate. Like I kind of want to really show off the openness and then also like inclusiveness, I guess, in the things that I design or the things that I'm a part of. It's like, yes, you have your target demographic, you have your user persona of like who you want, but at the same time of like, oh hey, like making sure that like things are accessible for anybody to be like, oh hey, like I'm not part of this like targeted demographic, but like this is still something that I can use or like be a part of or feel included. And I feel like that's hard also like just like from a business perspective, but I think in terms of just designing things, this might not be the target, but it's like, oh hey, if this is like you want to be a part of the target, then like you can be and you're like more than welcome to be. I think that's the type of design that I would love to do. I
It's
guess
very
I don't know
welcoming.
if that was the question. Yeah, it's very welcome. Yeah,
I like that. I
yeah.
like that. Very much like you. You're a very welcoming person. So it's fitting.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. What has been your biggest challenge throughout all of the projects you've worked on so far, and how did you kind of overcome that? The biggest struggle, I think, is that we haven't had a lot of, I guess, examples. So it's kind of like going into it and not really being able to learn a diverse amount of best practices. To being like, okay, like even with like our current project, it's like, oh, like we haven't had this specific type of client. To be like, oh, hey, like coaching. So it's like, oh, like how do we best lay out like where to put like learning more about this or like the testimonials or like blah blah blah. It's been very just like generic. Hey, like maybe here's a product, here's the hero, blah blah blah. It's just like, oh, what's a good example of a good coaching website, or like what's a good example of this? Like this is where we want to put X Y Z. So it's just been, I guess, like tough trying to emulate good products as opposed to being like, oh, hey, I have a personal style and this is how I'm just going to apply it to this product or this type of website, and like working with user flow. That's been the biggest challenge. So it's been a lot of like research, like independently to be like, oh, hey, like this is what I like, but I don't know if this is best practice or if like this is really the most ideal way to do it. So you kind of like only like you can choose what you like to be like, okay, I think, and then like that feeds into the whole like, but you're not the user, but we also don't know what is best.
So that's been hard. I think one project that I really like that we did was for a mobile banking app, like a personal finance, like Wealth Simple esque type of vibe. And it's like all of us were like, bro, we have no idea how we're supposed to do this. Like the layout for it, signing up for a page, like financial XYZ. And then so you're like looking up at like all these like different websites and like you're like, like I like this, I like that, but like I don't know if you're allowed to just like pick and choose from all these different sites to be like, oh, this is what I want to make. Or if like, is that just what design is, where you're kind of like, I'm gonna make my own. But are you allowed to? I don't know. So I think that's been definitely like the biggest challenge of like, okay, like, because are you following another, I guess, like website a little bit too much if you're trying to follow like best practice or like,
Right.
you know? So yeah, I think it's just been hard in terms of like, where is a good standard for us to benchmark ourselves against? Then group project wise, I don't know. I think it's hard. Like as Tina said in one of our meetings, where do we compromise learning and then getting good grades? Because it's like, unfortunately, like we don't have the opportunity to actually be able to balance both. So it comes at the cost of education of, hey, like I only do this one sort of task because like I've done it before and I've done it well and like they've done it. So it's kind of like
it's a hard balance to find. I get that. Yeah, I would say I face kind of the same struggle with running the Instagram account, running the socials for Symphonic, because that's social media marketing is something I'm so not used to. So it's kind of like, where is the balance? This looks really pretty, but does this actually appeal to our target audience? Is this hitting the new CEOs who want fully automated homes? How am I to know? Because I've never really had that experience exploring multiple different target audiences, because I feel that a lot of our school projects are all based on one primary target audience. It doesn't really vary much. It's always like somewhere between 18 and 35, and they all like really cool, bright colors. Well, that's not exactly what we're going for here. So it's definitely a balance. I understand that. Are there any skills that you wish were taught more in our program?
Oh, we have a laundry list of those. I think because we have a laundry list, obviously all the programs that we need to use. But I think the most useful would be knowing when to use all the tools that we've been given. And we've been kind of given like a little like sampler of like each of them, but it's like okay, like even with like Symphonic, it's like fully automated homes. If you're doing the social media, if you're doing the website, if you're doing all these, it's like okay, you should use this app, use these functions for this and like this and this. Of kind of like being able to apply the skills that we kind of do have, because like those we can learn. Unfortunately, we can learn online for free on YouTube and provided by Figma or just all these resources. So we can do all that learning on our own, but I think getting that industry knowledge from industry professionals of when to use these, like when Joanne taught us to be like, oh, hey, like you should use InDesign for like this print and this for like all that. And it's like, oh, I wish we knew that, so that we're not just using the apps that we're most comfortable with to do all the tasks.
Right.
Like what's the most efficient way to actually apply the knowledge that we have in the most efficient way possible. Like I think that's the most I wish we got out of our education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that. I think that's probably in my top 3 favorite things that I've learned from Joanne. Just in one of our design classes early in the semester, she was like, this is what you use Illustrator for. This is what you use InDesign for. This is where it's acceptable to use Canva. It's like, you are a godsend, woman. Thank you. Yeah, it would have been nice to kind of have more guidance in that aspect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think is the most rewarding project or assignment that you've done in school so far?
Most rewarding? The one that we just completed and Jason's Sticker Club. I don't know if you ever told you about that one.
Okay, give us more details on that.
So I think it's because now that we've completed a semester and a half, that we also have a lot more knowledge and skill set, and we have the right people to ask, and you kind of like bring in new characters. So I actually haven't really worked with Ronald too often, and Alex was like completely new. So I think it was such a good mix of like the people I work a lot with were very efficient and know how each other's brains work. So it's like that just worked really well. but also bringing in kind of different perspectives of like Ronald's, because Ronald has a very specific style, and also a very different background, and then Alex does as well. So I think kind of melding all those into being like, oh, like we know how to work with each other, but like let's bring in some new things to kind of like make it a lot more different. I think the end product was we had a working prototype with a brand guideline, and it was concept of a sticker club because Tina makes stickers, and Jason designs art, so we asked him to use his art for this project and to make a essential like marketplace. So it's something that like we all care about because we care about Jason's art and we care about Tina making stickers. So I think that was just a really fun, cool concept because it's like, oh, we have a working prototype. It's a project that we haven't done before, and it's just like a fun idea that we all care about. So we got to use like Alex's doodles like for the icons. We got the higher working prototype from Bronze expertise, and just like everybody else's like skill set just all meshed together really well to have like a very completed project. It's like, oh wow, like this is a project we haven't done before, but it's using all the skills that we have to apply to a new thing, and also being able to work with like new people. So that one I would say is our most fully fledged out fun cute little project.
Yeah, it's fun to see like an idea that you had just come all the way to life. It's very cool. I experienced that with the ink skincare brand guideline that I did, because we carried that all the way through the end, right? And we had a marketing campaign for it and everything. I glitter tattoos on the last day of classes with our logo. It was fun. It was really cool. So I definitely resonate with that. How do you stay motivated? I don't is also an acceptable answer. I mean, that would be my answer most of the time.
I think I just love learning. Like I love just having the opportunity to do something. And this year I feel like I'm more comfortable with the idea of failing. It's like I'd rather be doing something, even if it's like I go off the deep end and I go a little bit too hard in that direction. It's like I still learn something doing that. And then to be like, oh, hey, like let's come back to be like, oh, hey, like let's not do that again of veering off without an objective and going too far with it. That's a learning opportunity in itself. It's like, yes, it really sucks to be like, okay, like I wish we learned a lot more or that we got a little bit more out of our education so far. But in that sense too, like seeing it as like there's so much out there that there still is to be learned. That's motivating in itself to feel like, oh, like I can be better. So not making myself feel bad for things that I don't know. It's like, oh, like I don't know all these things. And it's like, that means I have the opportunity and like ways to get there. And the fact that we're surrounded by people that are constantly like that want to constantly grow and evolve and be better. It's like, how do you not stay motivated? Almost in a sense to be like, oh, hey, like you, like just like you and Chris specifically too, like just so hardworking, like finding opportunities for yourself to do all these things. It's like, oh, wow. And then it goes back to the whole like channeling you guys to like, I channel you guys because I feel like you guys, you're up there, you know, like, yeah. You go, oh my God, you want to do all these things. Chris always talked about, be like, hey, like, let's open an agency. And you're like, okay. I'm like, I have a job prospect. I feel like that in itself motivating. He's like, I do good work, I think. I hope you like it. Oh, it's tough. And it's like, no, I don't want to let my friends down. In case I like work with them, then it's like, I want to be the best that I can be. Because like I want them to trust me and trust the work that I'm able to like put out into the world, because I want to be able to put out work that I'm proud of, and that like other people are also proud to be like, oh, hey, like I know Bree, like I employed Bree, like I employed Bree. So because it's hard, like that realization of like, oh, like I don't think I've ever been really proud of the things I've done. It's like, this is an opportunity for me to work hard and like take everything that I've learned to be the person that I want to be, which is somebody who's actually proud of the work that I put out, as opposed to kind of just being like, oh, I'm hitting bare minimum, and like setting actual realistic standards for myself. So motivating in that sense. I love growing. I love evolving. I love changing.
Changing and evolving that's a good thing to love. It's a good thing to find motivation in, for sure. What advice would you give to someone just starting in our program?
Knowing what you want and knowing how to ask for it.
Okay, yeah. I think that's what our friend group kind of was like. coming into this, and I think
Mhm.
that's what helped us a lot, navigating the newness of it all.
Yeah, because I feel like all the building blocks are there. Like the building blocks are there in terms of we have the industry professionals, we have people who care. I think it's just being able to set them up in a way that like we can all succeed, and help each other succeed was something that was missing. Just like the connectivity of like all those building blocks. Like it's so funny that we were constantly asking of like, hey, like we want more from our education. Like, can you please teach us this? But every time we had like a professional or any industry night or kind of like being able to talk to our professors, they're all like, okay, like what's the most important thing to get me a job? What's the most important thing? Blah, blah. And everybody's like networking, 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 and then also networking. And you're like, do you have literally anything else? I'm like, can you tell me if like a skill set in Figma or a skill set in Illustrator or like how to use Canva is like what's going to help me get a job? No, it's networking. And I think it's so funny because of our trauma bond in that sense. It's just like, I guess we're all networked.
Yeah, we created our own network. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I wish they had given us a bit more guidance on how to network with people that we're not directly in a class with or directly working with, because I learned my networking skills for networking events on LinkedIn Learning. Like, yeah, so that would be probably something to touch more on.
But I think in that self though of like knowing what to ask for, it's like, we knew to ask, hey, how do I do this? But it's like, I don't think we've really ever followed up on the question of like, how should we do it? I feel like because I came from a business background and like the people that I knew in business, they're all very much like go-getters. And to me, that always scared me off because like I feel like I never associated myself with them because they're like, oh, like I want to be a finance consultant. I want to do all these things. It's like just very much like I'm willing to do anything to get there. And it almost feels like, in a sense, like, oh, like I'm trying too hard. And like you never want to be like, you don't want to come off like you're trying too hard. So I feel like that mentality has like stuck with me to like, no, like go talk to them, go follow up with them on LinkedIn, go ask for this. It's like opportunities aren't going to present themselves to you unless you go ask for them. And I think this is the first time I've felt that way because it's actually something that I want. It's like I want like a career in design as opposed to be like wanting a career in business to be like, I don't know if I want to do that. But now it's like
I'm good. That's good.
Just a chill guy, And then now I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit of a try hard and like I want to go do all these things. I think that's the learning curve of like how do I go from chill guy to being like, hey, like
it's good though. It's good that you're passionate about it. Before we move into the fun little personal questions, let's touch on AI. What are your thoughts? They were talking on AI again last night about how it's going to steal our jobs on the news. No, it's not. What's your take on this?
I love AI. I live for AI. It's a tool. I think the concept of it, it's like people who don't know anything about AI, it's so funny because like in like our design studio class and also like when we went to EIA, it's like everybody's like, we're gonna AI this, AI that, whatever. And it's like, bro, do you even know how expensive it is? Like for AI, like how to like have non-biased AI, have to have like, like there's just so much to it to actually create it and how powerful of a tool it is if it's done correctly. And like it's actually really hard to do it. If you don't learn how to like use AI, you're going to be behind because it's the tool that like people can make life so much more efficient and just do so much. Like everyone's just automating. It's like, why would you use more time and more brain power when something can be done for you that is a miscellaneous task that consumes a lot of time,
Absolutely. I think AI for designers kind of falls into the same category as Canva. I know a lot of people would be like, whoa, hot take. But no, actually, like Canva is a very simple to use, easy tool. Mm-hmm. You can export all your assets from your Illustrator file and keep them in a folder and just add them onto a nice, quick, easy, geometrical square and post it on Instagram. It's that simple. It just accelerates the process just a little bit. So in that sense, AI also can take things off your plate. And then there's AI in Canva, which makes it even better. But just taking the monotonous things like drafting contracts. I wrote the first draft of your contract using ChatGPT. And then I went in and I edited it and I made sure it was all what I wanted it to say, but it simplified that process for me so much. Yeah.
Because it's also like understanding the scope of AI. It's also understanding like Canva. It's like, oh yes, Canva are good for these things, but it's like if you want to go further, then it's like Canva can't do those things. So it's like, oh hey, like Canva's going to take all of designers' jobs, but you understand the scope of Canva. So it's like people just don't understand the scope of like AI, and it's like it's in everything, but it's like if you know how to use it correctly, it's going to do all those things. But I don't know. I think it's also about like older generations of not understanding how computers work. It's like, oh, like because it's so like almost like a far-fetched idea, it's like it misses the scope entirely, and they think it's that. I'm an AI lover. I'm like, you just need to know how to use it. I'm like, people who don't know how to use like ChatGPT. Did I ever tell you about that one time that me and Tina taught a lady at the airport in Arizona about ChatGPT? Like she didn't even know what it was.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, very fun little side story is that I had gotten off the train at the wrong point. So I started walking in Arizona heat, which is like 40 degrees, for about 35, 40 minutes because I didn't realize how far the airport was from the train station. I just got off at the wrong one. And my pride for some reason was just like, I could literally just walk back to the train station, take the train back down. I was like, nah, it's okay. Like, I'm just going to walk it. Almost freaking died. Like anyway, heat stroke, right? So I finally, I'm sweating my ass off. So she was on ChatGPT being like, oh, hey, like how long before you get a heat stroke, X, Y, Z. And like, so we're talking about it. And then she turns over and be like, oh, like, where did you guys search that up? Because like, how did you find this information? Because it's not Google. And it's like, oh, ChatGPT. And she's like, what is that? She thought it was like ChatGPT or like whatever. And I'm like,
crazy.
No way. This isn't like, this was in August. This year?
Just this past year, yeah. Those things that you expect everybody knows about. But educating strangers, look at you.
But also not to trust AI to do everything because AI doesn't make mistakes.
That's very true. As a UX designer, how does your brain kind of go through a project? Because we were talking about that a few weeks ago when I came over to your house. We discussed how you're very process driven, and I'm very like, I want to make this, like I want to initiate the creation. So
I think the very standard way that we learned in class. Like I feel like even the questions that I asked you about like our client, I think like understanding like, oh, like target persona. I think it's like kind of very similar to you of like, oh, like who are we targeting? What are we doing? X, Y, Z. But I think for me in terms of like, I'm very much like process driven of like everything is like a waterfall effect, even though we don't do waterfall. We do iterative design. In my head, it's kind of like, okay, like you have to do the personas in order to do the low fives and then the high fives and like, but I think one that the part I enjoy most is like it's working in a group. Like you talk about that like learning curve of like, oh hey, we only did projects by ourselves, and then with a group, is that ideation session that we're able to like talk with each other and communicate. I think that's the difference of like, oh hey, like discussing also our user persona, because it's like, oh hey, like this banking app, it's like, oh, I would think it's somebody who's like 1835, like tech savvy. Like someone else would come and be like, well, I feel like it's a different demographic. I think we should cover a little bit more of like, maybe we should like narrow down the age range, or we should kind of like open it up to being like, okay, like is it people with like high disposable income? Is it kind of like are we going more for like students and like young adults trying to save? So it's just getting all those like different perspectives of other people, like that influences the rest of the project. I am just straight yapping right now. But I feel like the most emphasis that I put on is like the root of it and like the cause of it all, to be like, why is this working? Why is it not working? And like making sure that those checkpoints are always reached in every part of the process. Right. To be like, are we still achieving the same goals? I feel like as you go down, you kind of like almost like morph where you're going, but like always making sure to go back to be like, oh, hey, like is it still meant for these people? Like, is it still achieving the goal that's like set out to do?
Okay, we're gonna move into fun and personal questions. What's your favorite project you've ever created?
I feel like I'm really proud of honestly all of them. Like being able to work with all my besties and like getting good grades. I think personal project wise, that like really put me outside of my comfort zone was so for Art and Fact, they did Run for the Cure, and they had asked me to design a t-shirt and help them with their social media marketing. And that is tough. Like, I am not a graphic designer. I don't do social media. I barely post on my own Instagram. And being able to, I think, design the t-shirt and learning about print, like that was honestly probably my favorite process, because I went to that print shop like at least like I think 3 or 4 times, because I'm like the t-shirt color was wrong. We had to make adjustments to the design itself and like learning about how print works. I'm like, wow, like this is such a, like I have so much respect for you guys when you tell me about it now, because I'm like, bro, like putting like designing it for the right screens, having make sure like the Pantone colors, but also having the physical Pantone colors out. And then it's like, oh, but you can't do like a frosted layer effect and like blah, blah, blah. And I wish it turned out better, but I'm really proud, I guess, like of the process, because I put myself in a position where I didn't know anything, that I had a lot to learn from like other people and kind of like figure it out on my own. But then now it's like I know better questions to ask. So the next time that I'm given an opportunity like this, it's like something that I still want to improve upon, but haven't achieved the results I've wanted to. And that's okay, because that's all part of the process, and you're not perfect on your first try.
Word. That does sound like a great experience. It's fun. And yes, setting things up to print is hard.
The t-shirts that we ordered were tan. They were yellow.
Oh, trial and error. It's all trial and error.
It's fine.
If you could redesign any existing brand or product, what would it be?
I don't think there's one specific one. I don't think I really do, because my favorite thing is like very classic, basic, iconic logos. But I love when they do renditions for special holidays or like special events. I think that would be like a super fun product. My favorite thing, honestly, I always say that I'm always like a League of Legends fan. But like I genuinely like, it's not something that I would redesign, but like I commend them for what they do. It's like, oh, they have their brand and logo, but it's like because they have so many events and all this stuff, it's like how they repurpose the main elements over and over again with their new events or kind of like new things has been super, super, super cool. Like I can't think of a brand that I would like want to do that to, but it's kind of like that style of like rebranding, but like still keeping the same iconic brand.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, I love the consistency. The brand consistency across different special renditions is like a super cool. Love when brands do that.
Me too. I agree. I always do a little happy dance when I see something like that.
Wait, what about you? What brand would you want to redo or?
I actually have no idea. Jaguar's rebrand, just off the top of my head, because that's so recent. It seems a little far-fetched to me. I don't know. It seems like they're trying to reach a new demographic though, which I do think is super cool. They didn't keep much of the original brand or really any of it at all, which I would have liked to see. There was a happy medium, and I think it was overshot just a little bit. That is just my personal opinion. I am not Jaguar's target audience, I wouldn't say. I don't have the money for that, but it's a very cool concept. I just don't know how functional it is or how it's going to be followed through with, you know?
It's giving me like a mix of Tesla and Dyson.
Yeah, that's a perfect description. Yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes. I'm following that story and all of their media and stuff because I just think it's so interesting how they completely turned everything on its head.
Oh, entirely. Personally, like I don't like it, but I respect it.
Yeah, it's a bold move.
Like where it's at. I don't actually know too much about the car industry at all, but like from my just like perception of cars, obviously we're all transitioning to like EV and hybrid and all that stuff. And it's like where does an older classic car have a place in the industry like moving forward within the next like 10, 20 years, you know? So it's like if it's not gonna do it before the EV trend has like fully taken over the industry, like obviously it has, like it's just like I feel like in North America it really hasn't because of I don't know, capitalism, oil and gas, like whatever.
Yeah, guess we'll see. Last personal question before we move into the rapid fire questions. What is the weirdest or most unexpected source of inspiration you've ever had?
Weirdest, I would say more so like science. kind of like science and math like backgrounds, because to me it's also another natural process. And it's like
Right.
being able to see that it's like the bell curve like in math. Like
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, oh, there's a post about it being like, oh, like it's like seeing science in real life, where it's like a marathon people, and it's like you actually see the bell curve. So you have like the highest, like the fastest people at the front, majority of people were kind of clumping out in the middle, and then like you have like the slower people in the back. I think that was really cool, to being like kind of bringing like almost like being able to bring the scope back and like reframing projects in that sense of just like, oh, like we all are just, not that we're a herd of sheep, but it's just like science and math are always like ground zero of like, okay, like this is kind of where we fundamentally are as people, and like not to go in too deep about things, to be like, hey, like this and this. It's like, like, hey, let's bring it back down to like the fundamentals, the basics, because like life is just like math and science. That is like being who we are. It's like you can always break it down to like our atoms that follow science.
And that's such a profound answer. Wow. Mine's a little just compared to that. TBH. TBH. Mine was a picture of my teammate at EIA, Antonio. He sent a picture of his feet on the beach to the group chat. Yeah, and then he was like, free feet pics for you guys. So of course, what did I do? I took this to my Pantone app and I made a color palette out of it. And it ended up being just the most beautiful neutral color palette I'd ever seen. It's like, wow, this was supposed to be a joke. What is this? Now this beautiful color palette is forever going to remind me of my good friend Antonio's feet.
At the beach.
So at the beach, yeah. So you're.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting such a deep answer. You're like math and science, atoms, and like feet.
Feet. You know, feet are made of atom.
Wow, crazy. Way to tie that back. This is just inexplicable yap at this point. Okay, last section, rapid fire section before we sign off. What is your favorite font or typeface?
Oh no, you cannot ask me this. Helvetica New.
As you should. Color combination that you're loving right now.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so tough. I love all call. Oh, I love them all. I literally love them all. But I will never, without a doubt, always. I know it's always not the right color palette, but I will always put in like forest green and brown.
Forest green and brown.
Yeah, no matter, without a doubt, I will always put in a forest green and brown. Just to see, play around with it. I feel like honestly that those might be my brand colors moving forward. With maybe like a mix of purple or something. But yeah, I don't know. I just like a dark neutral. Yeah, I think those are always fun.
That's a good. Forest green and brown are so nice together. Coffee or tea while working, or any other beverage.
Coffee first, but only one cup.
Oh.
Yeah. And then after that, bubbly. Just because like static water is also very stimulating. And then in between those two, regular water. Then also the logic behind it is that you can't have drinks that you like too much, because then it'll just reinforce you to overwork. It's like a time for a sweet treat. It's like after the work's done, it's kind of like a reward. But it's not like a constant like, oh, I can do this while I just keep working. It's like like I'm gonna have to stop eventually. And it's like when I stop, it's like when the sweet treat. But that's like a personal, like, I need to discipline myself to like do things, as opposed to be like, I am allotting 12 hours to complete this one project because I'm in the middle of sweet treating. So I'm just like motivating myself to get stuff done in a shorter amount of time, with not giving myself too much like pleasure to enjoy that process.
Word. Okay, well, that's good advice. I'm going to take that advice. Thank you. Okay, and with that concludes our first ever interview on digital dopamine. Thank you so much for being here, Bri.
Thank you for having me, Riley.
Gosh, anytime.
Me again. That outro was also super awkward, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I had a fantastic time talking with Bri today, and her LinkedIn is linked in the bio. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe, maybe drop a comment, maybe find me on LinkedIn. I always like getting messages on there. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Come back 2 Fridays from now for the next episode where we'll be talking to Tina, as I mentioned in this video. Bye.
Bye for now.